Exterminate! Exterminate!
I'm the Doctor.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm from the planet Gallifrey, the constellation of Cerberus. I see Raz.
Time and relative dimension in space.
It means life.
Greetings, humans, Daleks, Time Lords, and Cybermen. You are listening to Exterminating Doctor Who.
This is the show to take unpopular episodes of Doctor Who and debate whether they're really all that bad.
With your hosts, Aidan, Gula.
And me, George Ellis.
And in today's episode, we are talking about Nightmare in Silver.
Ash.
That's what happens there, isn't it? We had last week off because I wasn't very well, but we're back now. We are back now, as we promised, with Nightmare in Silver.
How are you feeling?
I'm much better, thank you, George.
Don't really care.
And
And no one in the audience is going to care either.
no, they're not. But, you know, for those 3 people that are like, where were you last week? That's where we were. I was just watching Jessica Jones. Anyway, we are back with Nightmare in Silver. We promised we would. An 11th Doctor episode that we haven't done the 11th Doctor since episode 2. We are now on episode 11. Obviously, episode 11, 11th Doctor. But and our first Cyberman story as well that we've done on here. So that's nice.
Yeah, it's a real landmark, that.
It is, isn't it? So what are your general thoughts on this episode? Because this is a really strange one to me, because obviously I've scheduled it for the podcast, which means that I think it's worthy of a second chance. But when I watched it, I was so bored. I sort of thought, does this actually deserve a second chance? Because, I don't know, this is the most mixed my feelings have been going into one of these podcasts.
Yeah, it's hard for me to do one. Okay, blanket statement for the whole episode. There's some strong bits. Some really, really strong bits. But it's just a bit in other places.
That's definitely one way to put it. It's so strange because it was like I went into it thinking, well, it's an all right episode, you know. Whatever you think about the Cybermen, I think they're all right in some bits, maybe not in others. Well, there's some nice things here. You know, let's give it another chance. But I've come away from it thinking, I don't know if it's because I do my little bit of research and see what people say is wrong with it, and then when I watch it again, I see those flaws. I don't know if that's part of it, but I was just watching thinking, I've never really found that many negative things in this episode, but now I can see them all.
What's one of them? What's one like main problem?
Well, I think it's going to be predictable for me to say it, but of course it's the kids, isn't it? Whatever the names are, Angie and something.
First off, why were they in the episode? And I'm sure there's an explanation. Second off, whose bright idea? Okay, kids child actors are either really good or they make me want to throw them off a building. But that's one thing. Why would you write the characters in such a way that one of them is the brattiest brat who's got no redeeming qualities other than you want them to just die?
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, there's a narrative explanation as to why they're in it, and there's also a production reason as to why they're in it.
Production reasons annoy me because that means someone had.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna throw out the production reasons first, really. But the narrative, right? Okay. Narrative reason is because at the end of the previous episode, the kids are looking at something and they see a picture of Victoria and Clara, and they go, "That's you, innit?" And then they see Clara on the Russian submarine from the Ice Warrior episode. How they got that photo, I don't know, but they go, "That's you as well, isn't it?" She's like, "No, of course it isn't." And they basically expose Clara as being a time traveler, and they're like, "Show me around your time traveling thing." That's the narrative reason as to why they're in it.
So kids have blackmailed Clara into taking.
Yes, that's exactly it. They blackmailed Clara into, because they were like, otherwise, because obviously Clara's their carer in a way, and they were like, "We'll tell Dad if you don't take us somewhere."
Right. if someone went up to their dad and if they went up to their dad saying, "Look, Clara's a time traveler," he'd go like this.
Of course
Oh,
she is,
that's
honey.
cool. Why? They wouldn't just.
Anyway, I've got bills to pay, so moving on with my life in the real world. The production, the production reason why is because, well, Neil Gaiman wrote this episode, who is an incredible writer, and this is probably at the bottom of his CV, really, because I
Probably
mean,
not even on the CV. Just
no, I mean, the other Doctor episode he wrote is The Doctor's Wife, which I think is a great episode, where the TARDIS comes to life. He's also written. He also wrote Good Omens. That was him. He wrote American Gods. That was him. Coraline. That was Neil Gaiman.
oh, Coraline gives me nightmares.
Dec-
Amazing, but that always freaked me out.
That was him. DC's Sandman. That was Neil Gaiman. And even Eternals, the Marvel film coming out later this year,
Wait.
supposedly, that's Neil Gaiman as well. He didn't write
DC's Sandman.
DC's Sandman, yeah.
Who? What?
Have you never heard of Sandman's a really popular
DC?
comic? I'm sure it's DC. I'm going to sound really stupid if it's not, but yeah, they're DC Sandman.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it took me a moment to figure out who he is, and then I just found this, and it was like, I see.
Yes. That's
Batman.
that's
Hear him, and then I'll understand. Okay.
anyway.
When
That's
you said Sandman, I was like Spider-Man.
yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? When there's two called the same
Yeah.
thing. But anyway, that is Neil Gaiman. So he's got he's a very popular writer. He's got a lot of good things under his belt. So they were like, "Can you come back for another Doctor Who episode?" He's like, "Absolutely, sure, I'll do that for you." And he wrote a two-parter about the Cybermen. They weren't originally an upgraded Cybermen. They were the 1967 Cybermen had come back from the story The Invasion. It was 1968 or 69.
I mean, it would make sense because these Cybermen would be on a completely different location. So for them to be the originals would make sense because the ones we see of the New Who originally are Earth. You know.
I mean, the Cybermen from The Invasion were on an Earth story.
Okay.
Well, I think, but I'll come on to this actually here. The idea was this episode would end with every different Cyberman we've ever seen, all their separate armies all coming together. Because throughout the episode, they're talking about how there's the Cybermen Wars, isn't there? There's that going off over there, and Siberia Wars, whatever they say. So we would have had like the Tennant Cybermen next to the Troughton Cybermen, next to the Davison Cybermen. They'd all be together. That was the idea.
Because they wouldn't all develop together, so they'd all have different. Yeah, but
Yeah,
that
exactly.
makes sense.
So that was what was originally supposed to happen, hence why the Invasion Cybermen supposed to be in it. So the upgraded Cybermen weren't in the original idea.
Okay, it's already better.
So yeah, it was supposed to be a two-parter. It's supposed to have a Cybermen war. It's supposed to have the classic Cybermen. And the reason the kids are in it is because I don't think Stephen Moffat was very clear to his writers when he was developing Clara, because they'd all seen the episode. They'd all seen the episode where she's the Victorian governess.
Yes.
So they assumed Clara would be the Victorian governess. So the children in this story were originally written as the children from Victorian London. So then when they came around, to it, and Stephen Moffat probably went, "Oh no, that Victorian Clara's dead. That's a different thing." He's gone, "But now I've got two children in my script. What the hell do I do?" And he went, "Oh, I don't know, just babysitter." And that's basically, I think that must be how it came in. So that's the production reason as to why they're in it.
Yeah, I mean that loses a lot of like. If they were Victorian kids, then they're gonna have there's already a layer of awe and wonder there, but instead they're just bratty. Oh, that's
yeah. I mean, I often say this. I hate the way adults write kids, because you can always tell there's a real generational divide, because they've gone, right, kids, what do they like? Phones. So let's make everything about phones. They go, "Oh, I can't charge my phone. Can I take a picture of this?" I'm like,
I'm so bored without my phone.
And I look at it, I go, okay, there are kids like that, but this is just a massive perpetuated stereotype right here, and it's not true. Like,
and it just annoys people who thing is, there are so many examples of kids being written well. I mean, animations write kids well, and that's because, well, to be fair, the kids aren't voiced by kids. So.
Yes. My always example, I look at a kid like this, like whatever his name is, I cannot think for the life of me. She's called Angie, isn't she?
Dumb and Dumber?
The girl, anyway. But I look at Angie, but then I look at Laura from Logan X-23, and I think,
Yeah.
And
You
I
don't need
think-
to explain that to me. Thank you very much.
and I think, look, you've got this child actor and this child actor. Yes, we are on a TV budget. Yes, you've probably just, opened up BBC auditions, gone, any kids around?
I was gonna say go to the local orphanage, but that's not that's not very.
No. Any kids want to be in Doctor Who? Yes, please.
Because it's cheaper because you don't have to pay them.
I've got a Mars bar. All the
God.
kids following it. Anyway, let's cut that. Let's end that politically incorrect section there. They just. It's literally my first note that I wrote down. Kids are annoying and have no purpose. That is the first thing I wrote down because I'm just like, I don't care.
Right, solution for the kids before we because have we completely thrown out a rhythm here? We're just going willy nilly, aren't we?
What would we do to fix it at 10 minutes in, if that?
God, no. There's just one solution to these kids, which I would have.
Execute.
Well, yes, but also, so there's this thing called the TARDIS, yeah? Could the Doctor not have, instead of put the kids in a room completely alone, put them in the TARDIS? Just in the TARDIS.
That
Just
would make
wait in the TARDIS.
And that's next week. We're going to do a Capaldi episode called Kill the Moon, where he does no. Yeah, it is Kill the Moon. He does exactly that. He gets a kid, just chucks him in the TARDIS, went, right, stay there.
That's the Doctor.
She comes out again, of course, but he basically just throws her in there and goes, right, this isn't safe for you. Just stay there. So that's what he should have done with these kids here.
Like, the kids could have still wandered off out of the TARDIS, but it just feels like the Doctor's a smart guy. He would have, he wouldn't have been like, yeah, this is fine. He would have put them in the TARDIS. Or it's character development, and Peter Capaldi's Doctor is really ashamed of how.
And he's learned. Yeah, he's learned from that. He's gone, right, I've had kids with me before, so let's just.
Yeah.
Okay, where do you want? Right. Usually, I'm going to be jumping around thematically again, but usually, a lot of these episodes we can say, okay, it's a bit crap, but the Doctor saves it. Okay, we've said that a lot. That's been a common theme. I'm not going to say the same for this episode, and you might disagree with me.
Part of me does.
Because I think I like Mr. Clever, but I'm not a fan of the Doctor in this episode. Because this is series 7, besides from the Jodie Whittaker series, which obviously rank bottom of my series ranking, but series 7 is the next one up from that. So it goes series 12, 11, 7. Because I'm not a fan of this series. This, to me, is when they completely lost what the Doctor is supposed to be. And throughout this episode, I was thinking, just stop flaring your arms around all the time, doing all this everywhere you went. It was so, they completely, like series 5, Matt Smith does that, but it's in amongst quite a dark Doctor. Then it gets to this series and they lose all the darkness and everything just for him to just be going, yeah, everywhere all the time.
No subtlety. He's just instead of being this person who's giving off this persona to hide the pain, he's just this persona.
Yeah, and they completely exaggerated it. And throughout this episode, I was like, I think there's a bit when he finds Angie and whatever the boy is called, and he immediately runs up to them and starts doing all of this around their head. And I was like, what are you doing, man? And I don't know if that's a performance thing from Matt Smith. I don't know if it's just a directing thing. I don't know if it's how he was written, but they completely lost track of the 11th Doctor in this series, in my opinion. So usually when I'm like, the episode's bad, but the Doctor saves it, I'm like, he really doesn't. Matt Smith maybe saves it, but the Doctor doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, because my view of this Doctor is patchy.
Apache.
Helicopter, yeah. There are some moments in this which I really do like from the Doctor, though. Like, there are a couple of highlights which I really am a fan of. I will say Mr. Clever is actually a much more interesting character because the way he speaks actually feels more genuine, but that is true. But at the beginning where he lands the TARDIS and then he does a little jump around in excitement, I like that bit.
Yeah.
because that
That's
felt
I suppose that's a little build up where you've got that as quite a just I'm just quite quirky. I'm here. I'm like planet whatever. But it's when you get into the thick of a scene and he's still doing all of
he's
this,
still
and I'm
flailing.
like,
You
I'm like,
don't
come on,
feel it
got
did
more
feel,
serious things to deal
okay,
with.
okay. When because Clara is a very strong character, and the problem is what happened is in this episode it felt like although the Clara was saying she trusts the Doctor and all that, in hindsight you don't ever actually see the Doctor be all that trustworthy. Like
No.
you're going off what she's saying. It's the classic. They're telling you what's happening instead of showing you. So obviously we know the Doctor's a strong, trustworthy character, but in this episode you don't really see that. He does clever stuff, but he also does a lot of dumb stuff to get himself in that position in the first place. And he does act. He is a bit over the top, quite a lot over the top actually. I do agree. I still enjoyed him though, and I will say he was better than any other. Him and Clara. Okay, list of best acting in this episode. Clara is on top of everyone in this episode. Jesus, no.
What website did you watch this episode on? Because that's not the one I saw.
Bugger me. And then you got Matt Smith underneath. And then no. Clara was the best in this episode. And what's her name? I know her name. Olivia Coleman. She is fantastic.
Olivia Coleman?
Yeah.
As in the Queen from The Crown? Do you mean Jenna Coleman?
Edit that out.
Absolutely not.
Oh, that's why did I say
That's
Olivia
embarrassing.
Olivia I've got to Google this because I don't even know the.
You know who Olivia Coleman is? Broadchurch, The Favourite.
Ah! Well, there you go. I'm sorry.
I'd love to see her playing Clara. That'd be different, wouldn't it?
Oh, fuck me.
Matt
God
Smith flirting with Olivia Coleman. It's like a Crown crossover right there.
I'm ashamed. Right. So, Jenna Coleman.
Yes.
Is a standout in the episode.
Yes.
And then I'd say Matt is next in line because everyone else is abysmal. Well, actually, no. Warwick Davis is very good.
Is he though?
No, but he's very good because he's Warwick Davis. But his actual, up until the point where you discover his character as the Emperor, he's interesting. As soon as he's the Emperor, it's
I have a few points about acting, and it's really telling because I hated Clara when she was in Doctor Who. Like I absolutely despised her. But since she's left, and we've seen whatever we have in the TARDIS now, I've come around on Clara because I'm thinking, you know what? Actually, you can be quite good. I do think she worked better with Capaldi rather than Smith. But anyway, I've warmed
because
Clara
you get rid of that
away.
love, because we've had that love connection before with Rose and David, but then it feels kind of it feels very over romanticized or a bit too much with Matt and Jenna.
But I have the other points about acting I have are Warwick Davis is fine as Wicket or as little characters, but I love Warwick Davis, don't get me wrong, and I don't, even though, famous story about my brother nearly pushed him down the stairs, but but okay.
What was that? You just brushed over that one.
Have I never told you that? Right, okay. So near me, there's this place called Heights of Abraham.
Okay.
And it's basically this massive hill, essentially. You can only get there by cable car. Well, you can walk up, but it will take you quite a while. So you get there by cable car. Then you get up there, and there's all sort of there's a park and cave tours and minerals and that kind of thing. It's a touristy thing like that. We've been there a few times. Anyway, I was there once with my brother and my dad. I was quite young at this point, and I didn't really know who Warwick Davis was. Okay. So we're in this gift shop, and he's there with his family, and they're just looking around the shop.
Wow.
But then we're quite young at this point, and me and my brother went upstairs, and my dad was still downstairs. And then he goes, "Aidan, Stanley," and calls us down. He's like, "Where have you gone?" So we were like, "Oh crap!" And I had to run down these stairs. So my brother just saw Warwick Davis and was like, "I don't know who you are," and just pushed him out of the way. And we were at the top of stairs, and if he'd pushed a little bit harder, Warwick Davis would have fallen down those stairs. So then we ran downstairs and reunited with our dad. And then we were in the queue to get into the cable cars to go down. And there was these two girls in the queue in front of us, and they go, did you see Professor, have you seen Harry Potter? What's he called now? That whatever that means. They were like, have you seen such and such from Harry Potter? And we were like, that means nothing to me. I haven't seen Harry Potter. Don't know what you're talking about. They were like, oh, well, he's in the gift shop. And we thought, oh, is that guy we nearly murdered? Got in the cable cars, went home. This was the eerie thing. The second we got home, we turned on TV. Harry Potter was on, and it was his scene. And we went, oh, no way. Like, we could have had a photo with him, or we could have murdered him. But either way, there he is.
You could have ended Warwick Davis's career.
Yeah, so I feel like by saying his acting in this episode isn't very strong, I feel like I am starting beef with Warwick Davis. But
if he sees this, he'll remember you and be like, these bastards almost killed me.
I don't have a good history with Warwick Davis, but I do really like him. But maybe when he's just in costume playing a character, for want of a better word. Here, when he's supposed to be giving an emotional speech about what it's like to be an emperor, I was like, I'm not sold on this, really. He just sort of looks into the distance and goes, I wouldn't like to be emperor. And I'm like, oh, come on, that is just appalling.
Right. With that line, you can have some layer of subtext with you actually being the emperor. When he said that line, I was like, are you? And there was no like, I can see the pain. It was like, I'm just seeing you talk about someone who did blow it up. And I was hoping it was the Doctor actually that blew it up, but you know.
I mean, I just love the acting, the Warwick Davis school of acting. It's just look into the distance and say something. Would you like to be Empress?
Yeah.
Don't
also, what was
don't
that?
blow
What was
that
his
up.
idea there? Let's marry this lady I've never really known. How did he think that would go?
I think the Emperor's probably been Me Too'd since this episode.
The Emperor, not Warwick Davis.
Yeah, not
The
Warwick Davis,
Emperor.
the Emperor. I'm talking in universe.
We're not starting something else here.
No, I'm really just starting beef with Warwick Davis, aren't I?
Yeah.
Oh, the other line
Yes,
about
okay.
the other acting, I'm going to get blacklisted, aren't I? The only other thing about acting I've written is Jason Watkins wasted. Now, I think Jason Watkins, who played whatever Hedgewick, was it?
Yeah.
I
When
don't know
he
what his name
first,
is.
I don't know the name either, but yeah.
Plays the guy in the amusement park. Anyway, I think Jason Watkins is one of the finest TV actors of our age. I think he's absolutely incredible. When he played the Christopher Jeffries in The Lost Honor of Christopher Jeffries, that is one of the best things I've ever seen. When he played the journalist, I guess you can call him, in Des with David Tennant, that was incredible. In this, he has a total of about 3 lines. He goes, oh, welcome to my amusement park. And then for the rest of the episode, he has a prosthetic on his face and just stands still. And I'm like watching it. I'm going, you've got Jason Watkins.
I know, they wasted
and
it.
you're not using him.
He really sold you on the world, and it was really interesting. And he's a fantastic actor. But then they decided to turn him into a statue for the
Zombie,
rest of it.
essentially. A cyber zombie for the rest of it. And it frustrates me. Because every time he does talk, I think, yes, let's give me some good Jason Watkins action. But then he's silent for 15 more minutes. And then he might just go, we are the cyber race. And then that's it. He's silent again. And I'm like, you've got Jason Watkins right there. Why aren't you using it? Make him the Emperor. He wouldn't just stare into the distance longingly. Sorry, Warwick Davis. I'm really sorry. I love Tenable. Well,
The fact out of everything you could have said there, and you decided, actually, yeah, no, I love you, Warwick Davis. I love Tenable.
your game show.
That's his strong suit. Good one, Aidan. Gee.
Yeah, I don't care if you've done Willow. You've had your own Lucasfilm films. I don't care. But when you say incorrect answer, that's when you really sell me on your talent. Oh my god!
Oh, we're never gonna be famous.
Podcaster blacklisted from film industry over insults to Warwick Davis. Oh, God.
Jamie back.
Oh, anyway, let's move on from the acting. Just so I don't say anything else offensive.
But before we do, those soldiers. I know you're this punishment. Division.
Oh, Oh yeah, that was just stupid. I mean, a point I have is they just didn't take themselves seriously. Like,
And one thing, right, Doctor Who. This is a big. I want to say this to any Doctor Who people out there, for past and present. Why is it when you decide to have soldiers in your episodes, you think it's a good idea to put them in laser tag outfits? Why?
this is an emergency appeal.
It's like just plastic hockey shit.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It
like
lose.
we've had soldiers in Doctor Who. David Tennant's era of soldiers, unit. They didn't try and put them in plastic outfits. They had them wearing uniforms. But no, these guys wear. It's dumb. It looks cheap, and I hate it. Stop it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I just, do you know the bit when they're like plotting their strategy and she's got that little sticker, she's going pointing to all the things on the map. I've never really thought about it before, but it completely lost me because I was like, you're not taking this. We've just had that Cyberman attack when he's doing.
Should we go to the silly castle, or should we? And it's like, okay,
yeah,
right,
that's it. Whatever you think of this Cybermen flash speed, we'll come on to that soon. But that whole scene does feel quite threatening, and then it's immediately followed with, "Shall we go to Nanny Longbottom's comical castle or whatever it's called?" I'm like, I thought you sound like you're in a Carry On film. I don't even know what you're talking about right now. You've just completely shattered
is it
that
supposed
point.
to be? Doctor Who can have comic relief. It can, but you never hear the Doctor. The only time he's ever cracking a joke in a stressful situation is because he's trying to trick the enemy, and it's a diffusion. It's a diffusing. You know, it's diffusing a situation, that kind of thing. But if you suddenly have a soldier, it's you don't chuck humor. It's like with when Jodie Whittaker's Doctor did the bit with where she. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm trying to phrase it.
Well, we've done 2 episodes, so give me more of a
The one where she's finding the psychic paper, where she goes,
yes,
"Oh,
and the
I
Witchfinders.
can't find it." Yeah, and it's
Yes,
like
yes,
that. Yeah, you had a strong moment, but you forced humor in the middle of it. Yeah, like you can have humor, strong moment, humor. Don't be trying to jam humor where it shouldn't be going.
That's it. You need to put it in the right place because just that scene where she goes, "Let's go to the comical castle," and then Warwick Davis, sorry again, follows it up with, "To the comical castle it is then." And I was like, shut up. You've lost me.
Yeah. Again, it's Warwick Davis that Aidan seems to dislike in that scene.
I know I'm really not doing myself any favors here, am I?
No, but no.
Acting wise, let's round this off with Mr. Clever and the Doctor. I think that's the best way to
Mr. Clever is ace. Mr. Clever is ace.
Yeah. Mr. Clever.
Because it really,
not the Doctor.
I always love that because you get to see a side of the Doctor that you don't usually see, and it brings out some truths. It's a shame we didn't get more of that, and we should have seen more truths. But it was nice seeing that.
The thing I really like about it, like you said, there's certain lines where Mr. Clever will say something, and you look at that and you think, but is that Mr. Clever saying that, or is that actually just the dark side of the Doctor? And I really like that mystery. One thing I looked at when I was doing my research for this, and people were giving me the negative points.
Who are you talking to? Who are these people?
I wasn't talking to anybody. I was watching YouTube videos. But something said was like, "Oh, why does Mr. Clever just look like the Doctor? Surely it should have been like a Cyberman in the Doctor's head." And I was like, you've missed the point there, haven't you? Because it's not about Cybermen taking over. This is the Cybermen enhancing the dark parts of his personality.
It's an upgrade. That's what they're always about.
Yeah.
Every Cyberman is always a part of. There's the person who they really were is always in there. But with the Doctor, they haven't transformed him. They've literally just added to him.
Yeah, exactly. But there are some. It does make for some I really like, and it's in a few things, but when somebody plays both the good version, plays a good guy and a bad guy in the same thing, there's billions of things like that, isn't there? I mentioned it earlier. Logan does that, doesn't he? He plays himself old, and then he plays.
You look at any Batman comic, and there's always Batman beating the shit out of Batman.
Yeah, out of
Owlman as.
But there's also a classic Doctor episode, a Troughton one again. There's a lot of Troughton themes in this one, and that's because Neil Gaiman has always said that Troughton is his favorite Doctor, and every episode he's ever written has real Troughton themes. But anyway, There's a Troughton episode called The Enemy of the World, and the concept of that one is basically they land on Earth in, I think, 2018, which obviously is since passed, but they land on Earth, and the Doctor essentially gets arrested because they go, "You're the evil dictator, Salamander," and the Doctor's like, "You what?" And then they show him a photo of this evil dictator who is like the spit of the Doctor. So Troughton in the episode plays the Doctor and Salamander, and it's great considering it's like the 60s, and they really replicated that here with the Doctor and Mr. Clever. And I do think, as much as the Doctor is quite an annoying in it, when he is Mr. Clever, that's when he shines. And like I said, that's why the Doctor doesn't save this episode, but Matt Smith does, in a way.
Because Matt Smith is allowed to really
Stretch his legs.
Wings. I was okay, same thing. Because I was careful there because I wanted to say spread his wings because my brain was like legs. No, he doesn't want to spread any legs.
Well, if you mixed them, if you spread your wings or stretch your legs, if you said Matt Smith really gets to spread his legs, that's when it'd be a bit questionable. So, I said, I don't know what website you watched this on, but you've given us a very different episode.
Doctor. I'm not going to say what the other word could have been, but
I can't think of any, so I'm not going to say anything.
No, but Matt, he really gets to kind of show off his acting capabilities as Mr. Clever because you get to see the side of the Doctor which he was able to show off in his first series.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the writers decided let's keep that under wraps for this one. So it's just because the whole point of the Doctor is he's this facade of niceness, but he's this dark, traumatized character deep down. And Mr. Clever forces that out in a way that we don't usually see, and we should have seen that more. Like we should have seen some much darker stuff from Mr. Clever, rather than him trying to flirt with Jenna. Got that right. But I think we could have got more from Mr. Clever. He's the standout, but you could have got more from him. You could have had him
I guess
really torment people. And if he knows everything about Clara, like rather than just being like, "Oh, he hasn't told you," he could have just gone, "Well, this is what this," and just completely shatter her mind. I've never known Cybermen to be tricksy. They're usually just straight to the point and evil. They are computers.
Yeah, that's a nice point. I do like like you said, in your Snapchat last night when you said that when he does the impression of the Ninth Doctor, that's
he
good.
does
I
the
like
Ninth
that.
Doctor going into the 10th Doctor. I love that bit.
Yeah, that's
he does
nice.
Allons-y. I was like, I reckon, because when he started doing the accent, I was like, this seems familiar. And then he went fantastic. And I was like, oh, hello. And then he went Allons-y in a slightly, he did make David slightly camp, which really fit actually.
Allons-y.
Yeah, I loved it. But that was lovely because again, you get to see Matt's acting potential. Because remember, this is all a precursor to the Crown. So this is before he, you know.
Tell you what I liked though. The only other point about Mr. Clever I've written is I love the gold reference because in classic Who, that's what they did all the time, especially in the 80s. It was like Cyberman chuck gold at it, and that was just that was the way they solved every Cyberman story. It was just like, oh, I happen to have some gold foil in my pocket. Let's just rub that on a Cyberman. The end. So it was like I loved when they chucked the gold on his face, and then they were like upgrading. Let's get over that stupid weakness. So I did quite like that. But that's the only other thing about Mr. Clever I think I've written. Anyway, shall we talk about something that has been upgraded?
No.
The Cybermen designs in this episode and everything that goes
upgraded.
Everything that goes with them. What I know you're not a fan of these Cybermen, so I'm going to say this, but I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say afterwards. What do you think of these Cybermen?
Right. Imagine a rainbow. Just a nice rainbow right here. Yeah.
Sure,
you're picturing it?
This one? Yes, sure.
Yeah. What do you now imagine a word within that rainbow? Okay.
Indigo.
No.
Okay.
I detest these new Cybermen designs. They're cool and they're sci-fi and they're futuristic, but they're not scary and they look like plastic. There's no horror in them.
Okay, right. I'm going to say my opinion now.
Why are you so quiet?
I shouldn't be. That was just because I was far away from the microphone.
Yeah.
Well, I was sat back like that. So what did you expect? My opinion on these Cybermen, they look cool. I think they did a good job of making them threatening again. Whether that makes them scary is a different question, but threatening, they're definitely threatening. However, they are more robot than humans upgraded. And because I've been to the Doctor Who experience so many times, and I've seen those suits up close and personal, I know that they are made of essentially rubber. So when I see them moving in this episode, I can't help unsee that rubber suit. Whereas at least Cybermen, which are more chunky and ka-chung, ka-chung, ka-chung as they're walking around, but at least they look convincing. That's my opinion in a really monotone voice, but that's my opinion.
There's no. The Cybermen are upgraded humans. That should be deathly scary. They literally turn you into something you can't control.
Yes.
And instead, we get these cool looking Iron Man robots. And it's like, yeah, they're cool looking. Yes, they're going to sell toys. But I couldn't care less.
Well, the ironic thing is they didn't sell toys because they actually never made a toy of these Cybermen.
Really?
Yeah. Well, they made
like
a 3.
Perfect toy.
They made a 3-inch one, but the actual 5-inch proper range, they never made these Cybermen, which is really frustrating.
I mean, why would you want it? But
well, for the set.
It's just the powers these Cybermen get doesn't it feels like right. It's the classic Superman issue. If you give a character every single power known to man, then there's no threat. Like there's no.
I guess so. Yeah. The thing I like about them is sort of the legend that surrounds it. Like when they say, if there's just one Cyberman on this planet, we need to blow it up because we can't have just one Cyberman. And the way that they characterize that, I think it was threatening. And then when they are all in that room and that one appears at the door and you do hear the proper and it's there.
The only reason I like that music is because it reminds me of when Cybermen were scary.
No, but I think it's one of my favorite Doctor Who themes because it's just a sense of dread whenever you hear that. And when there is just that one stood there and everybody goes, oh no, there's a Cyberman, and then it just dashes between them. Whether or not you ever think of that, that's the only time I've ever seen them do that speed effect. They never did it again. That's the only one time we saw it. But I think when you see that, I think it's quite a nice and new thing to see, considering it only happened the once and it wasn't just like they were speeding around all the time. I think it's quite a different take on it.
But that doesn't demonstrate to me the fear. Because, right, if a Cyberman can be that speedy,
yes,
and there's millions of them,
yes,
why was there any fighting back? Just paste. Everyone's paste. Done. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Maybe it was the only speedy one.
That's not true, and you know that. What they should have done is they just should have had the Cyberman walk through the the good guys in this situation. Just walk through them. They're fighting it. He's just plowing through. That would show me. That would be scarier to me, and it would show more strength. But instead, you see him zip through, and it's like, well, now you're a superhero. It just
fair enough.
It didn't work for me.
No, I mean, if they had been doing that all the time, I wouldn't be a fan. But the fact it's only once, I can forgive it.
But the fact that it's only once for me is the reason I can't forgive it. Because why introduce that power if they're not going to use it constantly, or if you can just do something that works better in its place, that fits more with the character.
Maybe fair enough. I see that. That makes sense. I don't know. I do like in this story that they are constantly upgrading, like. Because that is the Cyberman's number one purpose, is just to upgrade everything around it. Like the Dalek's number one purpose is just to destroy anything that isn't a Dalek. The Cyberman's purpose is just to upgrade whatever it can. So when they are literally throughout the episode just like, oh, they found a way to defeat us, upgrade, we'll just update so that won't happen. I do like that. I do think that's a nice...
Yeah.
But I guess the problem with that is it just leads to the only way you can destroy them is just by blowing them up, I guess. But I don't know, it's quite a nice novelty idea, but where it takes you is a different question.
This whole episode feels it's a lot of running around in circles to get to the same point. Like, okay, one Cyberman, we've got to blow up the planet. No, the Doctor will find a way around this. Yet in the end, the solution is to just blow up the planet. There's no problem solving there. It's right. What's the first and only solution? Blow up the planet. No, let's figure out it's going to be blowing up the planet. What's the point in this whole ring around the roses if you're not going to do something clever to solve the problem?
Yeah, because
If you don't
the
want the
only
planet to blow up, why do you blow up the planet?
because the only difference between then and now is when they say we can't blow up this planet. The only different thing that happens between then and then actually blowing up the planet is Warwick Davis going, "I'm the Emperor." And it's like, "Oh, great, we can all get off the planet now." Whee! When I sort of think, you've had a TARDIS this entire time.
Yeah.
Could you not have just got everybody in there, just gone, activate, close the door, and then just fly away? Do you know what I mean? Stupid, isn't it?
Right, Mr. Warwick Davis, I know you're hiding from everything and you're the Emperor and all that. But the moment there's a Cyberman, could you have not just gone, right, I'm the Emperor, everyone come here? Because that's what an Emperor should do rather than let everyone on the...
But isn't the
he
point
lets
though
so
that he
people
doesn't
die.
want to be? The point is that he doesn't want to be the Emperor, though, isn't it?
Yeah, not wanting to be the Emperor and not being a savior are two very different things. That's being a coward. I don't want to be the Emperor, but I could save everyone here with a word.
Because even the ending, when it's just before the credits, when he's in his ship with that random, just person who works on the ship, and she says, "There's no signs of any Cybermen left," and he goes, "Okay, good. Do you want to be the Emperor?" And he's just like, "I don't want to do this." So I guess Porridge is a coward then.
I think
really.
he was just flirting with her. Do you want to be the Empress? And I was like, he's a sex pest. That's what this character is.
Yeah, like I said, he's been Me Too'd since this episode. There's going to be there'll be an episode in the future where Jodie Whittaker shows up on planet Siberia and she sees Warwick Davis on trial. It's like, "Oh, what happened?" And he's like,
I
"Sorry,
love how you chose to say Warwick Davis there and not the Emperor.
Well, we've already established that we're not on good terms. So. Okay, one thing that does irritate me about the Cybermen in this episode, actually, if I had to pick something, I quite like that they are sort of like, we will do anything to upgrade you. Like, even like, I'm going to take my hand off and it'll scuttle away like the Addams Family and get you. I don't mind that. The thing that it annoys me is when they take their heads off. And the reason being is because when these Cybermen return next series, in series 8, we see one of these Cybermen, Danny Pink, Clara's boyfriend, he takes the face piece off and you can see his actual human head beneath it. And I quite like that because you can see, well, it is a human in this suit. That's
yeah, okay,
nice.
that's good, yes.
But it does mean, well, are there some Cybermen that don't have the head in the suit then? Because if he's able to just pull it, he's able to just pull it off like that, like they do in this episode. You know what I mean? That sort of, it loses that. You just think
it's more robotic again. Yeah.
Just a metal shell, yeah.
It's
And
just
that's
a robot doing robot stuff. Whereas if
Yeah,
the
and
head is part of the body, you take the head off, the body shouldn't be able to do anything.
But it's about that
you go.
body horror sense of like Cybermen are Frankenstein zombie type things. So although I do like these Cybermen in a way because they look cool and they're like the Capaldi era Cybermen and I just have a soft spot for them, they are more robot than men in suits.
And I think that takes away a lot of the scariness and the horror.
Yeah. What do you think Cybermen should be? Do you think they should lean into that body horror thing as well? Or...
Oh yeah, right, okay. Cybermen have always been quite scary, and they're sad as well. Like it's upsetting because the scene that springs to mind is when when David where he's in the tux and the Cyberman's and it's actually a woman is on the floor.
Yeah.
And it just starts crying and it's asking about its husband. And it's heartbreaking, that scene, and it shows you that they are literally being used as this robot. But the moment you take away the emotion filter, it's that brain somewhere in there, and it's just it's literally a mishmash of human and robot, and I find that scarier than it being a man like with Danny Pink, where he's inside the suit, but it is kind of fused to him. That's scary, but that's kind of like, you don't look that bad. But when there's nothing left human-wise, but it is all still there in the sense where it's just you've gone human, blender, into the big suit. Then it's scary because they're in there, but it's like you can't bring those guys back at all. You can't take that face mask off and you've got a face. You take that face mask off, you've got a brain in there. That's not the person anymore. I find that much scarier. And I find that better for the Cybermen, than having them just kind of be more sleek. It looks better, and especially like, yes, you can lean them into wanting to upgrade more, fair enough. And that can be them wanting to use less of the human. But if you do that, it takes away the horror element. But if you do decide to do that, then just delve more into it being less of the human and more of just like the brain or the nervous system or something, or just the lungs and the brain. That's scarier.
Specify what you've taken from the human.
Yes, don't be
Yeah.
just like, we're going to use less human and then show me the whole body in there. You show me just the head, that's not very scary, because I can see, and my brain's going to fill in the gaps and just say, that's just a man in a suit. But if you show me the brain and just the lungs, like, okay, the best way they can do the body horror is, have you seen the RoboCop remake?
I refuse to watch it.
Okay, right. I'm going to share my screen because
How dare they remake it?
I know. Can you? How do I share my? Oh, I can. Okay. Oh, hello.
Oh, look.
What is it? RoboCop remake.
Julia Roberts. Why did you search that?
I didn't. RoboCop remake. Let me think. What's
They
that?
actually, Doctor Who did a publicity stunt once. I think it was for like a virtual game kind of, those VR game things. And they just got a load of these current Cybermen, not these Jodie Whittaker Cybermen we're talking about. They got a bunch of them and they just walked around Birmingham. And I think that would have looked. Imagine just being on like an escalator and there's Cybermen going down the other one. That'd have been so bizarre.
Well, there you go. I know it's a bit small, but that's literally what's left of RoboCop. And that's his brain. You can see his brain, and it's a full scene. And those are just his lungs, and this goes down to his just right hand. It's, for everything about this remake, this scene is horrifying, and it shows you just how much is left. That's his gullet, and you can see it moving. It's incredible CG, but it is scary, and that's what I think the Cybermen need to delve into more. Really,
that's why I liked the Capaldi episode with the two masters, because that's that scene where they've got all the patients on that ward and they're all like, you can't see the faces, they're all gagged up and everything. And there's that one just pressing the emotion suppressor, whatever it's called. And it's just going pain, pain, pain repeatedly. That is genuinely not just one of the scary scenes of Doctor Who, one of the scary scenes I've ever seen, full stop.
I have seen that episode and it is phenomenal, that bit. And it just shows you the Cybermen. If you go into this version of the Cybermen where they're cool and they're just trying to be robots, then they're boring characters. It's just another robot. But if you go into delving into the body horror, they become something unique and they become this staple of science fiction horror.
Yeah,
that's
what
they should be.
Because when that, I think, like I said, you said earlier, the best Cybermen story is David Tennant one. I do think it is that Capaldi one, just because of that chop shop hospital. Everything in there is disgusting, and it's just, that is Cybermen. Like, they're not just cybers, they're not just robots, but they are men. There are people in there.
That's the vital component. And in this episode, which we're talking about, like the one we just watched, obviously, they keep saying the Siberia, the cybers, and it's just kind of like, you're forgetting the scary bit
there
about
are people.
this.
You're forgetting that there's people in there.
They don't portray them enough as this human turned into robot. Like, especially with the kids. The kids just have something attached and then they're saved. That's it.
Yeah, because
whereas
that's what I was saying about the difference between them feeling threatening and scary. There is a difference there, because that's when he arrives at that door and that is threatening to me, but it's not scary, because you're not thinking, oh, that's a man turned robot. You're just going, there's a fast robot that's going to shoot me. That's the difference. So I do think they're threatening. I don't think they're scary. Scary comes from, in these Cybermen terms, like, I bet we're all traumatized as children who watch Doctor Who by all those people queuing up and those things above them. That is terrifying, because that's when it reminds you these are people. Or the Mondasian Cybermen, like I talked about. The original Cybermen. It feels like the original Cybermen were like, yeah, these are Cybermen. They just gradually got further away from the point until they pulled it back again. But in that Capaldi episode, when we see the origin of those Cybermen, because it was always a joke that those original Cybermen, it was just men with like human hands, and you can see they do have human hands in the original thing. But in the Capaldi episode, they contextualized that and went, yeah, they are human hands, but it's a robot arm. And that's like, do you know what I mean? That's when it's like, I like that element of it.
It's
As much as I do think these Cybermen look cool, I think they sort of, I think as I've come to appreciate Cybermen more as the body horror element, the fact they just look cool has been diminished by everything else around them. And the fact I can tell they are just rubber suits with that stupid walk.
and just to reinforce what you were saying about the body horror. In this episode, you don't see anyone turn into the Cybermen, and even the ones that are turned into these zombies, you don't really feel anything for them.
No.
But if you look at David Tennant's episodes, when it's a two-parter and then the people become the Cybermen, and then you see Peter Capaldi's where Bill becomes a Cyberman. But in both those instances, you meet characters, so Bill, and then you have the people in David Tennant's episodes, and you get to know them as people.
Yeah.
And then you meet them as Cybermen, and you really seeing someone you've grown an attachment for, or at least know about, then seeing them turn into this thing hurts, and it is so much more dark and scary than if you just see someone you've met for a minute.
I've got my only last two notes are things I'm going to say at the end. So I'm going to say now, shall we go on to what would we do to fix it?
Yes.
If we have time, I might edit this out, but if we have time, let's just, what would you do to fix it? I think my simple ones would be remove the children, give Jason Watkins, give some, my reworks would be remove the children, give Jason Watkins more to do, recast Warwick Davis. I'm sorry for all this beef, but recast Cybermen, give them more of the body horror thing and don't just make them generic robots. What else would you add to that? Would you agree with those four?
Yes, but maybe a tweak on the children. You could have the kids, but if you really want to go down a dark path, you can have the kids turn into child Cybermen.
Maybe yes, but also it's sort of like a common rule that you never kill children and things, do you? Not unless it's like an 18 plus. But anyway,
Yeah,
that'd make it really dark.
There you go. See, that
Dead children in Doctor Who.
I mean, they're not dead; they're Cybermen.
That's a way to get around it. Is there anything you would? Is there anything you would add? I actually can't hold up for things like that, so I'm having to do. But was there anything you would add to that?
I'd have Mr. Clever show a lot more of a darker side to the Doctor, and I want the Doctor to be ashamed of what Mr. Clever says because he knows it is true.
Yes. It's a good idea.
And
Neville Longbottom's comical castle, all of that whole scene with a stupid army, the hopeless army.
Just get rid of the army and make it.
I would rather just
team.
Just a generic army would be fine. Do you know what I mean? I don't need them to
either
be
a generic army or a fire team of like 2 to 3 people, close knit soldiers who've been through a lot of stuff. Done.
Yeah.
What else?
I think that's all. I'd quite like the original Neil Gaiman idea to have the different armies of Cybermen at the end. I'd quite like to see that. But
yeah,
we did.
But I think not getting that now means a lot more when we get
it in the Capaldi episode. Yeah. So yeah, because I sort of think it would have been nice to see even more Cybermen. Like there's ones I showed a picture of earlier, the Tomb of the Cybermen. They weren't in the Capaldi episode. It would have been nice to see them. It'd have been nice to see the 80s Cybermen, like just as many Cybermen as we could. But obviously, there's only so many suits that exist still. Do you know what I mean? So,
I mean, all of those Cybermen were CG, which looked abysmal. You didn't need to, when they were all lined up on the grass. I was like, this looks like someone's gone. Let's make one Cyberman. Copy, paste, paste. A row of people moving identically, and I know they're Cybermen and I know they're robots and they move identically, but come on. So one of them's going to have a servo motor, so they aren't going to move the same.
Yeah, there's a Capaldi episode actually. Do you remember the one where he's with Davros on Skaro? It's really neat. First time I saw it, I noticed this, but then I couldn't spot it again every single time I rewatched it. It wasn't until I rewatched it early this year that I spotted it again. But there's a shot of the Skaro sort of like skyscape, and you can see all these Daleks just flying around. And the first time I noticed that one of the Daleks bounces off like a wall, like it just flies into a building and goes ooh, and then flies away. And the first time I saw that, I noticed it. But then every time I watched it again, I was like, did I make that up? Because I can't see it anymore. But the last time I rewatched it, I noticed it again, and it does just go whoop and then fly away. And I love that just tiny little CGI detail. They're not just generic things flying around. So like you said, there could have been one of these Cybermen, you know, that we've got all these rows, but then maybe there's just one somewhere that just trips over something. Do you know what I mean? Just to be like, did you notice that Cyberman that did that one thing just to make it, you know? But I think that's all we've got on what would you do to fix it, really. I love how these sections are getting gradually shorter and shorter because we just basically just bullet point them. Our points now.
Is
yeah, streamline. We've upgraded it. So, my overall feelings on this episode are mixed because there are things I like, there are things I don't like. Did I cut out? Oh, he's showing us his pop. There we go. Not really relevant. Not really relevant to this episode, but sure.
Look, I'm half David Tennant.
Oh, I see what he did there. Look. Anyway, so yeah, my feelings on this episode are generally mixed, which is different, really, because we usually when we go into these podcasts, I come in either going, I like this one or I don't like this one. There are very few I've come away from going, yeah, I'm not really sure, and I'm still not really sure because there are things I like, but having watched it again in the context of doing this podcast, I found it so boring. Which
Would
I never
I
have.
watch this one anytime soon, unless I'm doing a marathon? No. So that's
no. It was weird watching this on its own because I thought even the scene where the children expose Clara, for want of a better word, as a time traveler, I thought that was the cold open of this episode and was very confused when it wasn't there. So I feel like this episode only really makes sense to me, and maybe I can only enjoy it when I watch it in the context of Series 7.
Context is good for these episodes, but they've still got to be standalone. So they probably should have.
Yeah, especially because this series was actually designed as the standalone series. There are no two-parters in this series because each one was supposed to be a blockbuster single entity.
Blockbuster.
So having that, that was what they've described as blockbuster episodes.
Wouldn't really class this episode as a blockbuster.
Each one had their own like movie poster and stuff. That was the idea of Series 7, and it didn't work because this is my least favorite series, bar the Jodie Whittaker ones. So. Yeah, that's my final opinion.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
Well, that's not tenable. Join us.
I think there are two ways to sign this one off because there were two lines that the Doctor had in this. Well, technically one's Mr. Clever. There's one where when he says goodbye to Clara at the end, he says, I'll see you next Wednesday, last Wednesday, a Wednesday, one of the Wednesdays. And I think we should say that about our podcast, especially after we had last week off. We should just go, I'll see you next Sunday or last Sunday, a Sunday, one of the Sundays. I think that's a good way to sign off. And I also liked when, you know, I've heard Toodaloo be saying lots of.
I love,
but I
when
love
he said that, like the moment before, I was like, my brain went Toodaloo, and he went Toodaloo, and I was like,
I loved it because it was the most aggressive Toodaloo I've ever heard. When he just goes Toodaloo, and then he just walks away. So they're
But that's the thing. The Doctor, he does get pissed off at everyone around him. So embrace that side. The next Doctor should be just a renegade, absolutely evil, just stabs people.
Well, that's what the kind of Capaldi, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but
I mean,
Capaldi,
he didn't stab people. But
exactly.
I mean,
You didn't go far enough. If I'm saying
his
Doctor with
Toodaloo. I think that's very Capaldi. So I think that brings us to the end. Speaking of Capaldi, we are returning to Capaldi next week, who again we haven't done since episode 3 because we basically just talk about Tennant all the time. So we're going to do Capaldi.
I'm okay with that.
And we're going to be doing Kill the Moon, which is a very heavily maligned episode.
Whenever you mention Capaldi, you always in some way mention how shockingly bad Kill the Moon is, or at least that's what people think.
Yeah, I do because it is awful. It is. But that's us next week. We will actually be back next week because hopefully I'm not going to be ill again. So, yeah. Toodaloo!